The Forum in Englewood, California, September 14, 1991. The building held 15,000 people that evening, and by 7:30 every seat had been taken. The occasion was a charity martial arts exhibition, the kind of event that drew practitioners from 17 different disciplines, 4 national sports federations, and a press row that stretched the length of the East Wall. Cameras from 2 network affiliates had been set up near the stage. A local radio host had promised his listeners something worth watching. He did not know how right he would be. The air inside the Forum smelled of floor wax and concession popcorn, and that particular tension that gathers when too many trained men occupy the same enclosed space. The overhead lights ran hot. The sound system cycled through a low hum between announcements. In the bleachers, 15,000 people settled into their seats with the careful, patient anticipation of an audience that had paid good money and intended to get its full worth. Stephen Seagal arrived at 7:43 in the evening. He entered through the east corridor with 11 people around him, and the crowd nearest the entrance recognized him before he had cleared the doorway. He was 39 years old that night, 6 feet 4 inches tall, 237 pounds, of a man who carried himself with the measured, deliberate slowness of someone who had never once in his adult life been made to hurry by another human being. His hair was pulled back tight. He wore a black silk shirt open at the collar and dark trousers that caught no light at all. His 7th film had opened 3 weeks earlier to $31 million in its first weekend. He was, by any reasonable measure, the most commercially successful martial artist in the world at that precise moment in history. He had also held a 6th-degree black belt in Aikido since 1974, earned under Koichi Tohei in Japan before most of the men in that building had begun their training. His technique was not theatrical. It was not the kind of Aikido that performed well on demonstration stages with cooperative partners. The men who had rolled with him in private described something different, a grip that relocated your balance before you understood it had moved. A wrist lock applied so smoothly that the pain arrived a full second after you were already committed to the floor. He had trained under conditions that did not accommodate pride. He had trained seriously, and the evidence of that seriousness lived in his body. His private motive for attending that evening had nothing to do with charity. He had read an interview 3 weeks before the event, published in a martial arts trade magazine, in which a journalist had described the American karate tradition as a product of the 1960s with no legitimate successor. Seagal had interpreted the piece as a slight against his own art. He had called the event organizer the following morning and requested a spot in the program. He had also requested a microphone. In the 4th row, 12 seats in from the center aisle, a man sat alone with his cap pulled low and his hands resting flat on his thighs. He wore a denim shirt over a white t-shirt. His boots were plain and scuffed at the toe. He was 51 years old that evening, 5 feet 10 inches tall. He weighed 182 pounds without shoes. He had not been introduced to anyone near him, and no one in his immediate section had looked at him twice. He had arrived early. He had bought a program, he had read it and set it on the empty seat beside him, and had not picked it up again. His name was Carlos Ray Norris. He had held a black belt in Tang Soo Do since 1962. He had competed in full contact karate for 11 years and retired with a record no one in that building would have been able to recite from memory without a reference book in front of them. He had trained Green Berets at Fort Bragg. He had sparred with Bruce Lee in a film and in a gymnasium and had afterwards said nothing about either experience to anyone for 9 years. He was, by training and temperament, the most credentialed martial artist in that building. He had come that evening because a friend had asked him to. In 6 seconds, what happened between those 2 men would be discussed in gymnasiums across 4 continents for the next 3 decades. The 15,000 people in that building had no idea they were about to watch something that would outlast the event entirely. If you want to see exactly what those 6 seconds looked like and what was said afterward, make sure you are subscribed and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. This channel exists because of the people who stay until the end. Steven Seagal took the microphone at 8:11 in the evening. During a scheduled intermission, he had been given 3 minutes for remarks. He used 9. He spoke about the hierarchy of martial disciplines. He spoke about the difference between what he called performance arts and what he called combat arts. He used the word authentic 4 times in 7 minutes. He described a category of American martial arts by name and by decade of origin as derivative and incomplete. He named Tang Soo Do. He named the men who had popularized it for American audiences. He did not use the name Chuck Norris. He did not need to. There were 15,000 people in that building and a press row 20 seats long, and every person present understood exactly which name was absent from the list. The tournament director, a man named Harold Gross, who had run sanctioned events for the Amateur Athletic Union for 14 years, set both hands flat on the table in front of him and looked at the floor. The sound engineer in the booth above Section C lifted his headphones from one ear and did not replace them. A photographer from the press row lowered her camera without pressing the shutter. The applause that followed Seagal's remarks was genuine but uneven. It moved through the building in patches, the way applause does when an audience is unsure whether it has just witnessed something impressive or something it will be embarrassed to have clapped for. In the fourth row, the man in the denim shirt did not applaud. He sat with his hands still on his thighs. He looked at the stage. His face did not change. Then he stood up. He did not stand quickly. He did not push past anyone. He reached up and removed his cap without theatricality, and folded it once along the brim and set it on the seat beside the program he had not picked up again. He straightened his shirt. He moved toward the aisle with the unhurried steadiness of a man who had somewhere specific to be and sufficient time to get there. The recognition began in the aisle seats of row 4, and moved outward through the building the way a current moves across still water, not all at once, not with announcement, but steadily and without stopping. Row 3 recognized him, then row 2, then the section behind them. By the time he reached the foot of the stage stairs, the sound in the building had changed, not louder. Different. The specific sound of 15,000 people adjusting their understanding of what kind of evening this had become. Steven Seagal, still holding the microphone, turned toward the source of the sound. He saw Chuck Norris at the base of the stage stairs. He had already lost, he simply did not know it yet. A fight is not two men moving toward each other. A fight is a negotiation about distance, and it begins the moment each man first reads the other's posture. What Seagal saw at the base of those stairs was a man who was not performing. There was no forward lean, no assembled tension, no preparation visible at the shoulder or hip. There was only the stillness of someone who had already decided, 17 years earlier, exactly what he would do if this particular moment arrived. The distance between them across that stage was 21 feet. Seagal, trained in a discipline built on proximity and contact, needed to close it. Norris, trained in a discipline built on control of entry, needed only to manage what happened when it closed. He did not stretch, he did not bounce. He did not roll his shoulders or reset his feet into any stance that announced itself. He walked onto the stage. Seagal handed the microphone to an event volunteer who had not been expecting to hold it. He said something to the volunteer that the nearest press recorder did not catch. He turned back toward the center of the stage. The first second, Seagal moved with his signature entry, the Aikido clinch step that had ended training sessions in private dojos across Los Angeles for 15 years. He moved his right foot forward at a precise 40-degree angle and extended both hands at shoulder height, reaching for the outside of Norris's left arm. It was a technique that worked, not a performance technique. A genuine entry from a genuine practitioner who had applied it at speed against men who were trying to prevent it. His hands found the sleeve. The second, Norris shifted his weight backward by 4 inches, not a retreat, a rebalancing, and rotated his left shoulder inward. Not a block, not a parry. He slipped the grip the way water slips a closing hand. And Seagal's entry, which required a fixed point to lever against, found no fixed point. It passed through without catching. Harold Gross, at the table near the stage, said later that he watched Seagal's expression change in that moment, and the change was not anger. It was something closer to arithmetic. The recalculation of a man who has applied a certain formula his entire adult life and found, for the first time, that the formula has returned a different answer. The third second, Seagal reset. He was not panicking. A man of his training does not panic in the third second of a confrontation. He widened his base and dropped his center of gravity 2 inches and moved his hands to a defensive position he had learned in 1974 from a teacher who did not accept excuses for poor form. His technique was sound. His form was correct. He was doing everything right. The 4th second, Norris moved his right foot forward, not fast, not slow, at the pace of a man reaching for something on a high shelf. It was the kind of movement that does not announce itself because it does not need to. In the bleachers, a judo coach from Torrance named David Kim leaned forward until his elbows were on his knees and did not lean back again. A stunt coordinator named Frank Bellamy, seated in the press row, later said that he saw what was coming before it arrived and still could not track the sequence fast enough to describe it in sequence. He could only describe the result. The 5th second, the combination. One movement into the next without pause between them. The way sentences in certain kinds of writing run together until the period arrives and the meaning lands. A low right kick inside the lead ankle, not full power, 3/4 speed, enough to shift the base. Then a palm strike at the sternum, flat hand, heel of the palm. Pulled at the last possible moment so the impact registered as pressure rather than force. Seagal's weight traveled backward at a 22-degree angle. His left foot left the stage floor. His hands came forward reflexively in the way the human body always reaches for something to hold when the ground disappears beneath it. There was nothing to hold. The 6th second, the floor of the stage. Not hard, not fast, not violent. A controlled arrival. Seagal landed on his back with both arms extended and both knees bent, which is what a man trained to fall correctly does when he falls, which is the clearest evidence that some part of his body had understood what his mind was still calculating. Chuck Norris stood above him. Not over him, above him. The distance between them was 4 feet, and Norris was already beginning to crouch toward the extension of one hand. The forum was quiet in the way that large spaces go quiet only when something has happened that no one was certain they actually saw. Not silent. The hum of the building continued. The lights continued. Traffic on Manchester Avenue 200 yards west continued in both directions. None of it paused. None of it acknowledged what had just happened on that stage to 2 men whose names were known in 17 countries. Norris's hand was open and extended downward. Seagal looked at it for a moment that several witnesses would later describe as the longest moment of the evening. Then he reached up and took it. On his feet again, Seagal stood 3 inches from the man who had just put him on the floor of a stage in front of 15,000 people. Norris said something that no one in the press row heard and no microphone caught. He said it once. He did not repeat it. His face, by all accounts, held no expression of satisfaction, no arrangement of features that suggested a conclusion had been reached that he found pleasing. He said the words and then he stepped back and turned and walked toward the stage stairs without any alteration in the pace at which he had arrived. The choice that followed belonged entirely to Seagal. The witnesses described it as visible. He stood at the center of that stage with 15,000 people watching, and he stood at a fork in a road that only he could see. One direction led to a version of the evening in which something had happened that he had not expected, and he said so, and whatever followed from that honesty was his to carry. The other direction led to silence and to the particular arithmetic of private accounting by which a man who has been placed on a floor calculates the difference between what the floor proves and what he is willing to say out loud that it proves. He turned toward the press row. He said that the demonstration had not gone as planned. He said that he had underestimated the footing on the stage surface. He looked at the empty space where Chuck Norris had been standing. Harold Gross, at the table near the stage, picked up his program and his pen and did not write anything down. The story left the forum that evening in the pockets of 15,000 people and arrived by the end of the week in gymnasiums in Houston and Calgary and Melbourne and Aberdeen. It arrived in the form that stories always arrive when they travel by memory and telephone, expanded in some places, compressed in others, and stripped in the passage of detail of everything that was too specific to survive the translation. The 6 second seconds became 4 seconds in some tellings and 12 in others. The stage became a parking lot in at least one version that circulated through Southern California for the better part of a year. The private sentence Norris had spoken became in various accounts a threat and an apology and a professional courtesy and a prediction and a single profanity delivered without supplementary language. What remained consistent across every version, in every city, in every account given by men who had not been present, was the essential shape of the event. A man had said something on a public stage, and a quieter man had answered it without raising his voice. David Kim, the judo coach from Torrance, told the story to his students the following Monday. He told it factually, without embellishment, from the position of a man who had been in the 4th row of the left side bleachers and had seen everything from entry to floor. He told it as a technical lesson about the difference between a technique that works against resistance and a technique that requires cooperation. His students asked him afterward what Chuck Norris had said to Steven Seagal before he walked off the stage. Kim told them he did not know. He told them that was, in his opinion, the most important part. Chuck Norris drove home that night on the 405. He did not give an interview. He did not call his manager. He stopped at a gas station in Hawthorne and bought a cup of coffee and stood beside his car in the parking lot for 7 minutes drinking it before he got back on the freeway. The attendant who sold him the coffee said afterward that the man had not seemed agitated or satisfied or particularly altered by his evening. He had seemed like a man who had been somewhere and was now returning home. Which was precisely what he was. What a man announces he can do and what his body produces at speed in front of 15,000 witnesses are two separate documents. Any practitioner who has trained long enough understands the difference. What most men discover too late is that other practitioners, the older and quieter kind, have been reading both documents their entire lives. And they know, from the first word, which one is accurate. Next week on this channel, the evening in 1983 when a group of professional wrestlers invited Chuck Norris into a backstage room in Detroit and asked him to prove something, and what happened in the following 4 minutes, that no one in that hallway spoke about publicly for 11 years.